listening to Heroes Forge, a Heroes of the Storm podcast.
Happy New Year, Forgers, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 53 of Heroes Forge, a community-driven podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. This, of course, is your show host, as always, Jeff Reynolds, and I am always here with the co-host of the show, who is more awesome than all of the confetti in Times Square at midnight on New Year's Eve. It's Kristen Ashton. Happy New Year, Kristen.
Happy New Year to you too, Jeff. I hope it was wonderful. And you know what? This confetti analogy, not analogy? I'm losing my words. Studied English literature and I can't even put things together. This picture you're painting with the confetti, it's great because not only do I get to just fall and have a great time, I don't have to clean up after myself.
That's right. I think they had over 350 people cleaning up Times Square, New York after the confetti and the ball dropped. And, you know, it's 2017 now. And I can tell you from personal experience, side note, before we begin forging here, I have been in Times Square on New Year's Eve. And I can say this about it. Never before and never again.
Really? So I'm sure there are people that set up camp days in advance, but are you even able to move around?
Yeah, so I went with a few buddies from college. You actually can't set up days in advance because they have these literal pens that they put people in, and you feel like, you know, livestock being herded into these pens. And once you get into one of the pens, and at least this is how it was when I went a few years ago, it was actually probably 5 years ago now. When you're in these pens, you can't bring food in, you can't bring drinks in, you can't leave. If you leave, they lock you out and you can't come back. And also, there's no bathroom. And we got there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
And you stayed the whole time, right?
We did.
Passing a empty beer bottle around, I'm assuming. You lucky duck being a guy.
Well, I can tell you what, after it was over, McDonald's never tasted so good.
Oh, I bet. Well, congratulations on surviving. Congratulations. It looks like a madhouse there.
It is. And, you know, this year was no different. Tons of people are out there celebrating the new year, and we are as well. This is season 2 here. We're calling it season 2 because we're starting a whole new year. Episode number 53. If you missed the last couple of episodes, they were a total blast, completely different than what we normally do, and a lot of fun. But as we said on Twitter a few days ago, it's back to business, and we're back into forging. But before we get there, we have a little bit of stuff that we want to talk about because there's some great stuff happening in Heroes of the Storm right here and now. The new Brawl, Kristen. Oh, how are you feeling about this one lane, random heroes? How are you feeling about it?
I thought it was still the Winter Brawl, to be honest. I didn't realize it had changed yet. So tell me about this Brawl then. What is it? One lane?
Yeah, it's ARAM. So basically you have random heroes as you go in. You have no Hearthstone. You have to use your healing fountains. And you're just given a random hero when you jump into this battle. And surprisingly enough, the games that I've played have lasted way longer than I thought they would. And it's making me, like Brawls always have been, kind of rethink my roster of heroes that I play. I picked up Brightwing, who I had never played before, and I had a ton of fun. And if I had one suggestion for people out there that are like me, I get stuck in these heroes that I know how to play, and I think that I'm okay at playing, especially when playing Hero League or any sort of ranked leagues out there. But when I get these new heroes, the fun comes back to me where I'm thinking, ooh, I get to choose these talents and I don't know what these abilities do, and it's a ton of fun. So it has inspired me to play different heroes as always. But the Brawl, Kristen, you got to get on it. It's fun, it's frustrating, it's everything a Brawl should be.
Wonderful. Now, have you gotten a Brawl where everyone's the same hero? Because those are my favorites.
No, I got to play it. I've played it, I think, 5 or 6 times. And I haven't gotten all the same hero, but I've gotten some weird comps. And sometimes I feel like we are just getting totally out-comped by the other team. So it's the dice you roll. You're doing a little Vegas out here when you play these Brawls. Usually they're pretty balanced, but sometimes it's like, you know, Abathur and a couple of other supports on the team where it's just, it can become a little bit of a mess.
Totally. And then, of course, there are people who, on the other team, maybe 3 of them have picked heroes they know really, really well. While your entire team, you have heroes that no one knows well. And so it's just a slow, slow loss. And I think in those moments, I wish the loss could come just a bit faster because you know it's going to be a loss. And sure, you can fight to your hardest and try and turn it around, but sometimes the comps just don't work out.
Yeah, it's a shame sometimes when that happens, but I'm telling you, I try to take those opportunities to learn the hero that I've never played before, and it can be inspiring and fun. So you've done your placement games already, right?
I have indeed, and I am sitting at gold 3. It's 2 ranks lower than the previous because I was gold 1, and I don't feel in a bad place. Like I'm with people who are terrible because I'm making the same mistakes they are. Sure, maybe not the same games we're making the same mistakes, but you know, and then I watch Kyle up in Diamond and he's facing the same stuff. Sure, the level of play is different, but you know, people not being there until halfway into the game, they disconnected or something, and so you're playing half of a game with only 4 people, and by the time the 5th person joins, it's too late. Or you have really great games where you're up against people who are playing heroes you know super well, but they don't, and you just run circles around them.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear because I placed Silver 1, which is one of the better placements that I've had. And I'm, like I said before in previous episodes, I'm trying to play a lot of games, log a lot of games this season and see where I can get to. But it's crazy to me that you're seeing that with when Kyle plays and those kinds of things. And I feel like I dropped into a few team league games and just got completely annihilated when I played with my friends, which is interesting that they added the 2 and 3 stacks to a team league situation where you're going up sometimes against a 5 stack if it can't find you a match and you just get annihilated. So, but it's those experiences that I have with players that are in higher leagues than me that make me think that it would be completely different up there. But what you're saying is that people make mistakes, similar mistakes in similar or in different leagues rather.
They do. Sure. I think what I've seen, what differentiates the leagues is your understanding of the mechanics and what your heroes are supposed to do, where they're supposed to be, and when they're supposed to be there. Because recently I picked up Samuro because most people I have found in my league cannot pick out the real Samuro for the life of themselves. They just have no idea. When I'm sitting there going, he's right there, guys. He's right there. He's almost just, all right, we let him go, right? So I figured I'd pick him up because he seems a little OP based on the skill level of the people I'm up against. And so what I'm learning here with Samuro is that I'm losing when I'm not playing mechanically like he should be played. And because I only have him to level 6, I don't know all of the fine points like I do with Sylvanas or Murky. I don't know all the time and on every map where I should be and when I should be there. So that's definitely a learning process. But the maps that I do have that down, it's a stomp, it feels like.
Yeah, that's really cool because I was thinking the same thing when these characters come out, and we've talked about it before where there's this learning curve moment where, you know, these new characters come out, and in the league that I play in Silver, it takes a little bit more time for the other players to understand the mechanics of how these characters work, like you're talking about Samuro. So that's really interesting. So do you take talents that buff his illusions?
It depends on the situation. It depends, right? Because you can give a favorite build, but based on the map, based on the heroes you're up against, based on the skill level of those heroes you're up against, it just totally depends.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that I can really work on as far as getting stuck in a rut. You know, getting stuck in these ruts of these talents that I pick every time. And when I'm in there and I try to pick different talents, it even becomes more fun to figure out different strats for the heroes that you play often. And there's tons of heroes out there. I mean, you got to get out there and complete the Nexus Challenge, people. If you haven't done it yet, if you haven't played with a friend and gotten these, you know, these free heroes that are just out there, and these are heroes that are in the meta that they're giving away for free as long as you just play a bunch of games. Of course, there's the Mao, the Genji skin, everything like that goes above and beyond. But I think the heroes, Kristen, are worth it to just get in there and knock out those games.
It is, because it saves you gold if you're a free-to-play player like myself, And these heroes are fun. I'd never tried Zarya before, but I gave her a try because I got her as part of this Nexus challenge, and she is a blast. She is a hoot. I am not the greatest Zarya in the world, but these shields and her accent and her flexing, it's wonderful. It revitalizes the game in a way.
Yeah, I was going to say, Zarya would be a character I think would be in your wheelhouse. You'd be really into Zarya. You should do more Zarya. That'd be great for you. And if you're out there and you don't have these heroes that we're talking about, Nexus Challenge, it ends on January 4th, I believe. Get in there, play some games with some friends, get some XP, and get some free stuff.
Yeah, you can't say no. And the mount is really cool too, right? And who doesn't want free stuff? You just got to play games. You got to pay with your time.
Yeah, start your 2017 with a bunch of free heroes for one of your favorite games. Heroes of the Storm, at least I can say for the both of us, it's one of our favorite games. And speaking of, it's time to move on into the main event of the show. Let's Forge.
Let's Forge.
All right, everyone, we're kicking off 2017 with a big bang here. A huge bang. We're going to kind of alter the way that we do things on the show just to make sure we've got a ton of community feedback that's been pouring in from you guys, talking about which heroes you'd like to see on the show, which heroes you've built kits for, and you're sending them in to us in the many different ways that you can do that. So we've got so much backlogged that we're going to be doing what we call the Feature Forger more often to make sure that we get all of your ideas on air and we can chat about all of them. So, starting this week with the first Featured Forger of 2017, Kristen, who are we forging this evening?
This evening, we are taking on something we still have yet to see in the Nexus, but we're all itching for a dragon, but not just any dragon. Ysera, and this was given to us by MistakenMishaps.
MistakenMishaps. My mind is constantly blown by everybody that sends in these kits. I'm telling you, MistakenMishaps happens to be one of our patrons and an awesome supporter of the show, and this kit came in and we read it, and Kristen, it was like, wow, these people are better at this than we are. Way better at some of these things.
And what's really cool is that everybody brings their own excitement when they send these builds in, because we all have different experiences with these heroes that we're building. And so to read these emails that we get is astounding, because there is so much love out there for so many different facets. And it's just fascinating to go through the lore and the ideas of how these things are supposed to fit together based on what you guys know and how you have experienced them.
Yeah, and the background and the connection that everyone has with the characters that they send in is outstanding. It's crazy because, Kristen, I hearken back to one of our very, very, very first episodes when we forged the Dark Wanderer from Diablo. And that's a character that a lot of people would never even think of having in Heroes of the Storm, but it was a character that you were passionate about. So we brought it on the show, and it's crazy what you can do with a little bit of passion and a whole lot of lore from Blizzard. You can create a character for heroes out of all of these NPCs or characters in the game. So when we get these builds in, like Ysera, which we've gotten from a couple of different people, or the idea of building Ysera from a couple people on Twitter, people have tweeted at us and said, Ysera, bring Ysera back and everything. And then we got this MistakenMishaps build. It was time.
Yep, and it's time for a dragon. Like I said, we were hinted dragons with Chromie, but Chromie likes taking the gnomish form. She's not exactly into her dragon body, but Ysera, and then with Legion too on top of it, she got some star power behind her. So I think if we see her, we definitely see at least a little bit of an actual dragon on the field for a period of time.
Yeah, that would be really neat. And like Kristen said, we all want dragons. This, I believe, is the third dragon that we forged on the show here over the last year. We had Nosdormu and Onyxia, and now Ysera coming in here as the featured forger, MistakenMishaps. So if this is the first time that you've listened to the show, welcome to the show. What we do here is we're going to take a character that's not in Heroes, and we're going to imagine what they would look like if they were in Heroes. But the special featured forger episodes, what we do is we take a kit that was sent to us. Kristen picks one ability from that kit, I pick one ability from that kit, and we each forge 2 more kits off of those abilities. So by the time this is over, we're going to have 3 completely different Ysera builds that'll all be available on our website, and you can check them all out once we're done here. And like I said, MistakenMishaps build is just incredible. So it was a challenge to try to come up with some things here to compete with these other builds. Kristen, did you find it a challenge?
I did, but that's because I want to make all dragons way too OP for the game. So the challenge with me is always scaling these dragon characters back. I want them to win, period, just when you choose them. You don't even have to play the game. Whoever chooses the dragon first wins. That's how it goes. But I know in all fairness, you can't do that.
You can't. And I think we talked a little bit about that too when we're forging these other dragons, is it's tough. I mean, these are really powerful characters that would be tough to portray in Heroes, but we know that they've taken these characters that have raid boss status like Ragnaros and brought him into the Nexus and fit him into it as well. So it's possible, Blizzard. It's possible. Let's get some dragons. I'm going to predict that we're going to have a real dragon in 2017. We have 362 days until we can see if this prediction is right or not. But when there's a dragon coming in there, we're going to have a big dragon party.
I am all for this. We'll have dragon-themed forging, dragon-themed drinks on the show, dragon-themed names, dragon-themed overlay. It's going to be a party like no other. And I think you're right. We're getting our first troll this year, so I think it's fair to think a dragon is on its way.
It's on the horizon. I would like to see some characters from other games, not World of Warcraft, but I think that's how a lot of people play. We got a lot of World of Warcraft characters coming in, and it's because there's so many to choose from over there. I'm waiting for some more StarCraft love or maybe some Hearthstone love, but I digress. Let's get into Ysera here. Kristen, why don't you tell a little bit about Ysera and her place in World of Warcraft?
Can do. Like so many dragons of Warcraft, Ysera existed long before Azeroth, as the elves knew it, came into existence. A green dragon blessed by Aonar to forever be bound to the dream of creation, Ysera, younger sister to Alexstrasza, watched the world grow from an unwaking dream. Though asleep for most of her existence, Ysera was capable of waking when the world needed her. She was there to defeat Deathwing, and she was there to help find Malfurion following Cenarius' corruption by Xavius. Sadly, however, this was one waking moment that should have never been. Though powerful beyond imagining, she could not fight the corruption of the Emerald Nightmare, and ended up paying with her life for the very human flaw of impatience exhibited by Malfurion. Though dead, she was made into a constellation by Elune, and now watches over Azeroth from her permanent seat in the heavens.
Yes, another character that has a dramatic, tragic story that would be added to the Nexus, which is crazy to think about all these characters these characters that all had dramatic endings, tragic endings, and they're making their way over to the Nexus, so Ysera should be next.
I think she should, and the thing I don't like about Ysera's death is Malfurion's irresponsibility caused it. Everyone was telling him to wait, to calm down. Once we get everybody together, we will handle this smartly, but he just couldn't do it. He ran off, and because of that, he forced Ysera's and everyone else's hands, and that led to her corruption and ultimate death by our hands.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people had an emotional connection when Ysera died in the game and everything that, that stood for and everything that was in the game about Ysera. And for a lot of reasons, Malfurion has completely bothered me beyond belief in Legion. Beyond belief, where I'm just like, Malfurion, just stop. Just stop.
Right, and I think the problem with this is that Varian, who is a human, who only gets 80 years tops, 80 good years, and didn't even get that many, shows more profound poise and patience and calm intellect than Malfurion has shown in Legion. And that's frustrating because Malfurion is old. He is ancient. He has seen the yin and yang of Azeroth time and time again, but has he not learned anything?
Yeah, it's a wreck. I'm telling you, it is a wreck. And it's very frustrating. And Ysera happened to be a bystander and a victim of this whole wreck. I mean, there's no better way in my mind to describe it. But I like to think that while we build her for the Nexus, we're thinking here what she would be like in her best state. Sometimes, maybe there's other states which we'll get into. So what we did is we each picked an ability from MistakenMishaps build here, and we're going to build off of it. You know, Kristen, I do have to say that last week we put the Twitter vote up, and they voted on which build they thought was the better, which build deserved the votes. And I happened to win last week's build. And if you missed last week's show, we forged each other as a 1-year anniversary of the show. And I think that the only reason I won is because I forged you.
Dude, you gotta stop giving yourself less credit. Own it, man. It was an awesome build, and you deserve that win. You deserve it, you own it, you take it.
Well, it was it was easy. You belong in the Nexus, Kristen. You do. It was very fun. So because I won last week, we're going to have Kristen's build go first. So the first thing we always start with and we always talk about is the role classification. What are you thinking Ysera would be if we brought her into the Nexus?
Well, going off of the lore that I read about, I'm thinking support is probably the best place to put her.
Support. I would have to agree. I went with support on my build too. I think it feels like that, especially the whole lore behind the story, like you said. So I think you're on the right track there. So what would Ysera's trait be if she was a support character?
Okay, the trait would be called Emerald Dream. Now, Master of Sleep and Protector of Dreams, every third consecutive hit on a target puts it to sleep for a few seconds. Any damage done to the target during this effect rouses the sleeper.
Wow, so a built-in CC with the trait here. So, oh man, that's really cool. So, a couple of questions here for you. Is your Ysera in a dragon form on the battlefield or in a humanoid form, or are we going to get into that a little later?
She is in a humanoid form now, but once we get to the heroics, we will see the dragon form. It's not going to be like Chromie's vision, where you see the dragon silhouette and that's it. No, we'll get a dragon.
Great. Very cool. I'm excited for that. I have questions about this too. Does it affect non-hero players, or non-hero NPCs like minions and mercenary camps?
Yes, I think it would affect the mercs, the minions, but no bosses, and then of course none of the objectives, should there be terrors or something like that.
So very cool. So are you thinking as the Ysera player in a team fight, you're focusing on the character that you want to lock down the most as you're auto-attacking and then doing all of your other supporting in the game? Are you thinking, well, I need to really stay on top of Illidan so that every third consecutive hit on Illidan is going to be asleep? That'll help the team out the most. Or are you kind of spreading your attacks out and doing it that way?
I think it would depend on who you're up against and what point in the game it is, right? Because what if you're up against a team, they're not too many interrupts, but they're tank CTC and he takes mosh pit, and you have a range that's long enough where you can poke him from the back line and interrupt the mosh pit? Because what if you're on a team that doesn't have an interrupt to contain that? I mean, if it's ranked and you had a draft, you could argue shame on you for not drafting a hero that could interrupt mosh pit, right? But what if you could have that interrupt with basic attacks?
Yeah, heck yeah. I think that's a situational thing like we were talking about before. I mean, it's really, really cool idea and super powerful building in that CC. So Let's talk a little bit about the mounting. I think we might be on the same page with this. What are you thinking Ysera would do if she mounted in the game? What would her specialty be?
Well, she'd have to turn into a dragon and fly. That's the only way I would play Ysera. I wouldn't want her to summon an owl or something silly like that. No, I demand dragon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would just be a really cool visual. So what are you thinking? Because I had a challenge with this when I thought of the same thing. What is the size of this dragon? Is it like is it a big size, or are we going to kind of take a page from Ragnaros's book and bring it real small down?
I think we'd have to take a page from Ragnaros's book, and the wingspan would be impressive, sure, but it wouldn't get in the way of your fellow teammates or the enemy team, right? Because if you make it too big and you have to maneuver through tight spaces, such as in Cursed Hollow, that would get a little absurd.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the only thing I can relate this to is Medivh's Raven, right? When you jump into Raven form, you fly around. Obviously, his trait allows him to not be taken out of Raven form, so this dragon is going to have to hover closer to the ground than the Raven would so that you could take it out just like a normal mount, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Great.
And maybe she does a cape swish and she does a quick transformation.
That'd be a really cool animation. I dig it. What are you thinking for first basic ability?
Okay, first one is called Emerald Touch. Ysera lets forth a burst of energy from the Emerald Dream, healing all friendly units it touches and granting them a small shield.
Very cool. So is this an AoE burst, or are you doing like a skill shot for this one?
This is an AoE centered on her, so she would simply walk into the area she wants to be, make sure everyone is there, they're cool, they're ready, and she just lets the explosion go.
So kind of like a Kharazim heal, where you're running in there and you're spamming the heal, and then he puts his arms out and heals everybody around him.
Exactly.
Yeah, but this one's going to grant a small shield as well, not just heal them.
Correct. And this was inspired... because with the shield, you can heal a bit more, because that shield protects the health that they've been given. So say you have a character that, I think they work for dive heroes the best, like an Illidan or something. You can give them health and then a little bit more to protect the health as it regenerates.
Yeah, totally. And those are some talents that you can take on a lot of support characters. Like Morales has a few talents where you can overheal someone and give them a shield if you keep the beam on them while they're fighting and things like that. I think that's really doable, and actually it would work in the game really well as a difference between this Ysera build and Kharazim, because there are times when you run into a battle and you're going to heal everyone that's in this battle and you throw your arms out as Kharazim, but the people that are already healed up all the way, they gain no benefit from it. So if Ysera has this ability, she's not going to be able to charge in like Kharazim, I'm guessing, but when she gets in there, she can do more. She's more effective at what she's doing.
Totally, and that's a great point, because even if people are healed up full, you give them something else that they can use.
Yeah, heck yeah. Okay, what are you thinking for your second basic?
Okay, second is called Emerald Drake, and this is kind of based off of that Hearthstone card, right? Because you get to draw a dream card if you have Ysera, and one of the dream cards is a drake. So I thought it would be hilarious if when she sees trouble, Ysera calls down a little emerald drake that picks up the targeted hero and then drops them off in a nearby area that Ysera decides on.
Oh, so cool. So wait, she gets to pick where they're going to get dropped off at. So this is offensive and defensive.
Correct. You can pick up enemy heroes or you can pick up your friendly heroes.
Oh, Kristen, that's killer. That's a really cool idea. I like that. So how are you deciding where they get dropped off? Are we talking like an Alarak sort of drag motion, or are you're clicking once to pick them up and clicking again in a different area to drop them off?
That's a tough one. I'm thinking like an Alarak, Ragnaros, click and drag, but maybe there's the option where you can click and click based on what's less confusing to you. But at the same time, it's just practice, right? You could go into try mode and get that motion down, no problem. And because of that, I like the Alarak Ragnaros version better.
Yeah, I think I agree too. I prefer that. Now, my question with this is that it's going to take some time for the Drake to fly in to pick up the enemy or the friendly and move them. So are we thinking here that there's a skill that would be required, kind of like playing Chromie, where when you're summoning, your skill shot is Chromie, it takes a second for it to actually fire off. Is this sort of ability where you can immediately call the Drake in, but the Drake's got to fly in and pick them up and drop them off, in comparison to Alarak's pull, where it's instant? You pull them and they get pushed and pulled in the same direction.
Yeah. So you have to be on top of predicting where they're going to be. I want to say it won't be instantaneous because you're right. The Drake would need to get there. It won't just appear out of thin air. So let's go half of a Chromie Sandblast windup.
Sweet. And then maybe the give and take with that is you can move them further than an Alarak push or pull, whatever you decide to do.
Totally. And then if they've moved even further away, then you get that much more value potentially from it.
Yeah. Sorry, I talked about this one a lot. I think that's a really, really cool idea. Okay, what's your third basic ability?
Okay, now the third one, originally I chose the first heroic. That's the featured forger ability I chose, but it works in conjunction with this one.
Okay.
So I felt it would be a disservice if I didn't take MistakenMishaps E as well, so that they could work together.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's awesome.
So this one is called Emerald Breath. And Ysera breathes out emerald flames in a cone that heals allies and damages enemies. Minions, however, take double the effects. And the cooldown of this ability is reduced by a 1/4 second per minion hit.
Ooh, this sounds like a specialist thing here, right?
Yes, and actually Mistaken built Ysera to be kind of a specialist support, but I know we've been working on keeping them kind of a core one or the other, so I made her the support, but I love the idea that in a very hectic battle, you can really pump out some strong heals and just spam them, right? Because if you're hitting minions and this cooldown is still going, you're just popping out the flames all the time.
Yeah, that is a really cool Mistaken. I love this, and I love that it has double effect. Like you can heal your friendlies and damage your enemies in the same ability.
Mm-hmm. And I love the idea, too, where this would work on your fellow minions as well, right? You hit fellow minions as well as enemy minions, and maybe it's just on permanent cooldown, and you just get to...
Yeah.
Or permanent active, I guess, would be, because permanent cooldown means you wouldn't get to use it at all.
Right. Permanent active. It's up constantly, being able to use it. I mean, this makes you a huge laning presence out there. You're pushing with your merc camps, you're pushing with your minions out there, you're healing them, and you're damaging the ones that you're doing. So you're clearing and you're also pushing. I mean, that's so cool.
Yeah, and what healer... What if okay, how many times have you been the support and you're the only one left up, right? How nice would that be to be able to just clear the lanes?
Yeah, absolutely. Or take a camp or do something useful. When you're Lieutenant Morales, it's hard. You gotta kind of just throw your mule down if you chose mule and try to heal up some buildings and run around and stand somewhere safe that you can still gain XP. So this is a really, really neat idea. Okay, let's get into the best stuff here, because I want to hear the heroic that goes along with that basic. So what is that?
This one is called Ysera Awakens, and Ysera transforms into her draconic form and roars to deal heroic damage around her area. Enemies that survive this will then fall asleep, undergoing stasis for 3 seconds. In her dragon form, she has 10% resistance, 100% increase in damage, and can only cast Emerald Breath. This lasts 10 seconds. It has a 100-second cooldown, and the range is larger than a mosh pit, but smaller than Twilight Dream. And then the level 20 talent here is great. True Nightmare. You increase dragon form damage by 200% and cast 25% vulnerable after the stasis ends for 3 seconds.
Oh, and again, this is the MistakenMishaps ability that was sent in here. First of all, mind blown when we get these builds that go into percentages and cooldown times, and Mistaken actually went through and actually gave all of these talents that would go along with the build too, which is way further than we're able to go on our short little show every week. So bravo to all these mathematicians out there that are able to figure all this stuff out, because it sounds so cool when you have it. So this is huge, Kristen. This is like a huge heroic ability. Plus another hero. I mean, this is crazy.
It is, and I like the fact that you still have to be talented enough to land it, because Mosh Pit, a little bit bigger than Mosh Pit, that still is a lot of room for error, right? I mean, how many of us have tried to land that sweet, sweet area of effect heroic and just whiffed it entirely? I myself am very, very guilty of this. So I like that you are rewarded for being able to pull this off.
Oh, and are you rewarded? I mean, you're getting some serious. I mean, you're a dragon. I mean, this feels like a dragon. It's really powerful, and maybe it would need to be reined in just a little bit. But man, you would feel so awesome out there on the battlefield.
Right, your support through the entire game, but then you get to 10 and you transform into a dragon. 10% resistance? They're trying to kill you, but the arrows are bouncing off. The gleaming orbs are reflecting back in her face. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm glad you added that level 20 augmentation that we've got here with the true nightmare, where it makes you even more of a dragon. Like, I imagine when you're a dragon, you're a badass, but then if somebody pisses you off, that's when you get to this level 20, where you get 200% damage resist, or you do 200% more damage and 25% vulnerable after that stasis for 3 seconds. I mean, that's crazy. That's really cool.
Right, if your team can't kill the enemy team, if she gets all of them in this, then you don't deserve to win, is basically what it comes down to.
You've been eaten by a dragon, which is a really cool way to go. Okay, let's talk about the second heroic here. What were you thinking for that one?
Okay, now the second one, I really also wanted to incorporate her evil form that we saw in Legion. It's just such a cool design. And this one's called Waking Nightmare. In an instant, the corruption of Xavius strikes true, corrupting Ysera and transforming her into a blighted dragon more powerful than ever before. In this form, Ysera chooses to kill her enemies, forgoing the desire to merely put them to sleep. While in this form, her basic attacks do massive damage in a sweeping strike that hurts all those caught in its area.
So cool. So this, you're imagining, is when you're at that point, you're like, we just don't have enough damage. We're getting through these battles just fine, and I'm doing my healing, which is fine, but maybe you have an off healer, maybe you have a Tassadar or something on your team as well, and you're thinking, you know what, we need some serious damage out here. You would take this talent.
Exactly. You transform probably twice as big as you currently are, right? You'd have to be massive to be the dragon. And then I would assume, like the first heroic, you'd get some resistance because you're in dragon form, so you've got the hide and the scales. And then you're just sweeping strikes, so you're pushing the enemy team back. If they get close to you, it's lights out.
That's really cool. So this is your only attack. You're not able to use other abilities while this ability is going on, correct?
Correct. And I'd like to think, because of this, and because she's a dragon, if you are blinded, it only counts for half. It reduces the damage done. So if they completely want to negate this heroic, they'd have to put on 2 or 3 blinds to completely get rid of any damage whatsoever.
Oh, very cool. That's a cool thing to think about that we haven't really ever talked about on the show, to be able to have these really super heroic abilities but still be able to counter them, but not in a way that feels bad.
Right? Like, you're still fighting and you're still doing something. You just need to make sure you are up on the strategy so that you can counter it. And if you don't counter it because of whatever reason, then you kind of get punished for it.
Yeah, that's really neat. Now, what does the transition look like here when you hit this ability and you activate it? What are you thinking is like her transformation? You brought up Xavius, you brought up the corruption, all of that kind of stuff. Is it just like an instant transformation? Does she have to take a second? What are you thinking?
I would imagine she would throw her head up to the sky and scream, because this would be painful. This is an evil transition, and great evil transitions, they're painful. They're not fun, right? And she screams, and then her body starts morphing and bubbling, and spikes shoot out in her tail. It's painful and hideous.
And awesome, I'm telling you. And just in time, too, because chat was just saying that they need the Nightmare Ysera skin in the game. I mean, well, why not just bring Nightmare Ysera in the game? That's what I think.
Yep, there we go. Why not bring all of the dragons into the game this month?
Let's do it. Let's just do one every week for a whole month. Welcome to 2017. Here are all of your favorite dragons.
I am perfectly okay with that. I mean, I'm playing a lot of heroes now, but just imagine if they bring in dragons. That's all I'd be playing.
Tons of dragons. Okay, Kristen, if you had to sum this build up into a short phrase, sentence, haiku, anecdote, what would you say your specialist Ysera, inspired by MistakenMishaps, what do you think it would be?
I would call her Dragon Do Right. Kind of based off Dudley Do Right. She wants to do the best by her. But, it's a little silly because it's the Nexus, so it can't be entirely devoid of humor.
Yeah, that's not. If you call it Dragon Do Right, it's not devoid of any humor. It's full of amazing humor, and that's really cool. Okay, amazing build. Awesome stuff in there. Before we get on to the second build, which is mine, inspired by MistakenMishaps, I want to thank all of our patrons out there for supporting the show. This year coming up, we want to have lots more patrons supporting the show so that we can bring you more content, and we have a whole bunch of different really cool and unique goals over on our patron site, which is patreon.com/HeroesForge. And a huge tip of the cap and a thank you to everyone that supports the show currently as a patron, and everyone that supports the show on iTunes. Giving us a 5-star review helps the show grow when people search for Heroes of the Storm podcasts. Help us get up there with the likes of Core and Into the Nexus and those shows out there, so that we can have more and more people and more content to bring you guys week after week. Also, I want to announce that after all this holiday craziness, which is just slowly coming to an end right here, we are going back to our normal time of streaming, which is every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific. You can catch us right here on twitch.tv/Amove TV, back in our normal time and place, Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Get in this chat room, because the people that are in the chat room always entertaining, fun, positive, cool ideas come out of the chat too. So jump in there. And also the show will be posted on Sunday nights again on iTunes and your favorite podcasting app, as well as YouTube. So much to talk about. Let's get into my build. Okay, I've made a decision here. As I was building this character, Ysera, I thought, you know what? If Blizzard can do it with Varian, that's within the confines of what Blizzard has in the game. I'm gonna build a multi-class hero here. So I'm gonna call Ysera multi-class support assassin.
This will be interesting. This will be interesting because we take high damage, generally low damage, and we're kind of going to shove them together here.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. And what is really cool is MistakenMishaps actually did the same thing, making it a multi-class hero, but it was support and specialist. So we're kind of thinking around the same way with Ysera. So let's get into it a little bit. So the trait will help us understand what I'm thinking with support assassin. So the trait's called Dream or Nightmare. Being a multi-class hero, the ultimate goal is to give the Ysera player choices that can alter her playstyle during the game based on the needs of the team. This trait is an activatable one that allows her to choose her form, either Dream or Nightmare. Passively, Ysera is always in the Dream form, which is the support form, and is able to use her abilities to heal and support the team. During her time as a support, she's using her abilities and gaining dream power. Once activated, this trait is able to transform Ysera into her nightmare form for a duration that is dictated by how much dream power she has gained while supporting. When in her nightmare form, her abilities change and have different focuses. The fantasy here is that Ysera would be a flexible support that would have the ability to support and, when needed, act as a powerful assassin in the Nexus.
Oh, sick. Now, okay, so she's in dream state, right? Physically, are you seeing her walking around on the battlefield?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes, it's the Ysera that we all know that's walking around, you know, a humanoid form, walking around the battlefield, you know, with her green aura and everything. And she's there, not in a dream state. That's what we're calling dream, as opposed to the nightmare state where she's still in humanoid form, which we haven't seen, you know, to be this nightmare Ysera, but as a humanoid.
Oh, nice, nice. So similar-ish to Ariel in that she needs to build up points of her dream power in order to then spend as the assassin.
Yeah, so it's opposite of Ariel in a way, where Ariel is building up all of these, using other people that are assassins to build up all this healing, to then unleash the healing, where in this Ysera build, she's using healing to build up her dream power to become a powerful assassin when she so chooses.
Nice. So this dream power, I'm assuming, is that second bar under her health, right?
Yeah.
How quickly does this fill up?
Pretty quick. I want it to be pretty, I want you to be able to switch back and forth pretty quick. And we'll get into that with some basics here. So the mount, I thought of the same exact thing you did. We gotta put her in a dragon. She's gonna do a twirl, cape, you know, whatever, and just become, I don't know what I'm trying to say, become a dragon and fly around the battlefield. I mean, what better way?
Exactly. It's the fantasy of playing a dragon. You want to play a dragon.
Yeah. Absolutely. You don't want to just play Chromie. I mean, especially if you can mount. I wish Chromie had a dragon mount. That'd be really cool.
I know. I wish she did too. And I think that's why the taunt is so beloved, is because we get to see a dragon. But yeah, just one look. Maybe if she grew wings, right?
That'd be cool. Okay, basic abilities, because the dragon needs to be in there. So the first one I'm calling Cloud9. One of my favorite esports teams that is no longer around in the hero scene. Maybe someday. But this ability is called Cloud9. Ysera can place dream clouds on the battlefield that heal all allied heroes that are inside of these clouds. When the cloud is placed, the amount of healing that the cloud can do is set, and the cloud drains that amount of mana from Ysera instantly. So you plop this cloud down and it drains a ton of mana, right? Because it's going to stay there and be able to heal heroes as they walk through it. It goes without saying that the placement of these clouds is key to ensure that the player is not wasting mana. When Ysera switches to her nightmare form, the clouds turn into a trap for the enemy. Similar to the nightmare clouds in the Emerald Nightmare raid in World of Warcraft, if the enemy team steps into one of these clouds, they will release a nightmare poison that will deal damage to them over time.
Nice. So I'm assuming the more mana poured into it, the more damage it'll also do. She switches?
Well, it'll just be around for longer. So these clouds, I imagine you throw this cloud out, it takes a huge amount of your mana, because if you think about, you'd have to relate it to Morales' heal beam, right? If you keep that beam on someone, it drains her mana really fast, really fast. So instead of having that constant drain of mana, the Ysera player would drop this cloud and it would drain, you know, let's say half of her mana down, but that mana would live inside of that cloud. So if someone walked into it, it would heal them. As soon as Ysera switches to Nightmare, that cloud would turn red and black instead of this green and blue that I'm imagining, and that mana would still live in that cloud, and it would stick around as long as there was still mana in it. So if people start running through it, the enemy team, they'd start taking damage and the mana would drain from the cloud. And if they stepped out of it, the cloud would still hang out. And then when Ysera runs out of dream power and she goes back into the dream form, it would transform back into the blue and green cloud as long as it still had mana to heal the people that would go into it.
Gotcha. So would you be able to choose how much mana you pour into it, or is it the same amount every time?
I think it's the same amount every time, unless you could have a cool talent that would increase. Maybe there's a talent tier, like you hit, whatever tier it is, maybe right before 10, and you can choose, I want to either add more mana to my clouds, subtract more mana from my clouds, make them, you can move them or whatever you want, but you'd have to place them in pretty cool spots to get the most out of it.
Totally. And then would they be destructible?
No, I don't think so. I think you can have them out on the battlefield, and I just love the idea of a team fight, and Ysera drops this cloud in the middle of the team fight that happens to be healing everyone that's around. The skill there is knowing someone's really low and maybe they're hanging out in the cloud and switching to Nightmare to do that damage to them while they're in the cloud and then switching back to do healing. I mean, I just love that aspect of back and forth.
Yes, that is very, very, very cool. And I mean, the visual of it is fantastic because we're getting these very distinct color changes all of a sudden. And I would imagine it would have to be distinct enough that you could keep track of it during a team fight, right? Because you wouldn't want to be standing in the middle of one of these clouds as soon as Ysera turns. That would be horrible. But at the same time, pretty darn neat if the Ysera player knows how to lay the traps and then watch for the opportune moments.
Yeah, it would be really interesting. And Chad is saying that the cloud could be movable by a gust of wind, like maybe a Falstad gust or something. That'd be a cool thing to put in there. I mean, you'd have to draft Falstad against Ysera in that case, but I like that idea. I think that's really cool. And it kind of plays into the second basic ability over here, which I'm calling Inception. So targeted friendly hero is placed into a dream and gains a passive healing cloud that follows them around the battlefield. All friendly units that are near the player affected by this are healed over time and are able to continue to fight. This can be talented into later in the game to allow the cloud to spread to other players as they come into contact with each other. But when Ysera transforms into her nightmare form, the cloud moves from her and becomes a nightmare cloud that will increase the amount of damage she is able to deal to the enemy and her abilities and basic attacks. So basically what's going to happen is this cloud that's on the enemy or on the friendly player, if Ysera goes into Nightmare, it's going to remove itself from the friendly player and transfer over to Ysera, and then she's going to have a damage increase and for her basics and her abilities.
Nice. Would this stack at all?
I think you could only have one out at a time. I think the timer would have to line up so you could only have one, like a safeguard from Morales or something like that, where you could put it on someone and as soon as it runs out, you still have to wait in order to use it again.
Gotcha. And then the clouds, would they be centered on the target hero, or would they kind of just float around him? And how big are these clouds?
I don't think they're so big. I don't want them to be super powerful. So they're on the person, kind of like fog rolling over the player that you select. And then Ysera is coming out in nightmare form when that cloud goes away from you and becomes that black and red cloud that goes to Ysera instead, and then she's stronger. So you'd have to time these things out like crazy, which is kind of the whole thing I was going for here. You'd have to have all your clouds placed in right places, make sure you have a hero that's cloud, and then change into nightmare and become that assassin.
Totally. The pre-planning here is immense. But I think the payoff would be well worth it.
Yeah, it'd be crazy practice to try to get this stuff right. But yeah, so it's cool. It's a cool idea. And what's even cooler idea is what inspired this whole build, which is actually the featured forger ability from MistakenMishaps, which just jumped into the chat. Welcome to the show. This was awesome. This is called Enter the Dream. Ysera casts a spell to herself, an ally, or opponent. It puts them into a stasis, banishing them for 1 second. So, first of all, I think this is so cool because you can put it on anyone to put them in a stasis. So, offensive again and defensive, right?
Just like the dragons. Yeah, and I think that's really, really cool for a support to be able to control the battlefield in that way, because that's a way you can support your team.
Yeah, it's so cool to be able to. I mean, it's just really neat because the stasises that we see right now, you can't put them on the enemy team, or, that would be a CC ability, which is different. This is all over the board here, which is great. So the little twist that I had to put on it to fit into my build was, I imagine that she can only banish enemies when she's in the nightmare phase, and would be able to remove a combatant from the battlefield for a short amount of time. So in the dream phase of her trait, she would only be able to do it to her allies, be able to help out allies, any of that stuff. And then when you switch over, that's when you could banish enemies.
Gotcha. And only 1 second, or would you want this to be longer?
I think maybe longer, but I really like the 1 second is if it's on a short cooldown, because that's a dynamic that we don't have right now, where you can just be like, banish, you're banished, everyone's banished, and you just banish people back and forth, but for short amounts of time. And chat is saying that it's like a single target void prism. Yes, that's exactly what it is. I like the idea that it's shorter though, and that you can use it more often.
Totally. So maybe on the level of a Brightwing polymorph, that kind of speed, because that's not too fast of a cooldown.
Yeah, no, well said. And it kind of works like a polymorph like that too. Yeah, I love that. That's cool. Very, very cool. Great job, Mistaken. That was an awesome ability. Let's get on to my heroics here. This one's called Nightmare. These are really crazy, as my heroics tend to be. So the first one is called Nightmare. So this is inspired, again, like Kristen's, it's inspired off of one of Ysera's Hearthstone dream cards that you can draw called Nightmare, which reads, give a minion +5/+5 at the start of your turn, destroy it. So you're going to get this massive increase to damage for your minion, but at the end of that turn and the start of your next turn, bye-bye minion. See you later. So, when activated, Ysera can choose an AoE circle on the battlefield and make that the range of the Emerald Nightmare. So it's all gonna change to the Emerald Nightmare on the battlefield. All allies that fight in this area are given a massive damage increase, as well as an overall health increase. The players have the Emerald Nightmare. If they leave it, they are immediately taken to 15% health and are back to dealing normal amounts of damage. This can be talented into later in the game to also debuff enemy players in the zone and force them to take increased damage. If Ysera selects this heroic, all of her abilities that deal damage are granted a passive bonus to damage as well. So this is the kind of like Varian. This is the second that you're choosing. I want to play Ysera, and we need the damage on this team, so I'm going to go more the assassin route. I'm going to select Nightmare and get this circle out there where if everybody fights in it, they're going to be really strong.
So, yeah, I'm trying to... Okay, they are taken to 15% health if they leave.
Yeah, so that's where that Hearthstone...
These are your comrades that are going down to 15% health.
Yeah, so this is that Hearthstone aspect here where you're getting dropped into the Nightmare. You have this massive bonus, but let's say that you get Falstad gusted out of the Nightmare. I mean, that would be a counter to it, or pushed out of it, or whatever. You're going to 15% health if you're not already that or lower.
I get it. That's awesome. It's that great balance, right? With great power comes great responsibility, and you either use this power as much as you can to at least take down one person, or you are severely punished for even attempting to do something so pro level.
Yeah, and I want it to be something that happens regardless. So let's say this ability's timer ends and the Emerald Nightmare goes away. Well, that means that it's gone. So you take 15, you're down to 15% health. So because of that, I think it's incredibly powerful. Like, I think you're getting a good amount of damage increase, and the enemy team has to play around that with either abilities like Gust or pushes or hooks or whatever it is to get you out of that area and change the way that the team fight is being played.
Totally. And could you imagine with the Thrall Earthquake wombo combo? That would be sick. But
oh yeah.
So how big is this area? Because I'm imagining it's sizable, right? Because you would need room for your team to fight.
Yeah, it's like Starfall. Is that what I'm thinking of? Yeah, Tyranda's ability. That AoE circle, I mean, it's a big area. It's not an ETC mosh pit. It's a big area for you to move around in.
Totally. That's a great size. Yeah, because I was envisioning maybe Artanis's blind circle or even a stationary Hyperion kind of thing.
Same thing. Yeah, same thing in my mind. And imagine how powerful this would be on a map like, I don't know, any of them.
Every single map, yeah, especially the ones where there are those twisty, turny corridors. You could get stuck so easily and trap people in there, show them what it means to be a monster, and then hope they don't find you after the nightmare goes away.
Yeah, and imagine if it was on like Sky Temple, you could throw it down on one of the temples and try to do that, or even, Infernal Shrines, and you're in there killing those little minions. I mean, it might be overpowerful. The balance might be really hard to get with this. And maybe it's not 15% health, maybe it's more. And maybe you're not getting that big of a damage increase, and maybe it's less. But I think it would be a cool idea to kind of implement that, where you're making the sacrifice for your team to do this major damage, like in Hearthstone. But then you're gonna lose a lot after it's over. So
definitely. Sorry. Quick question. So the 15% health. What if they're below 15% health?
Then they would be there when they left. Yeah. So that's another strat altogether. I mean, if everyone's already dying, you could throw this down and then just be like, well, we were going to die anyway.
YOLO, baby.
Might as well take somebody with us, I think. So the yin to the yang of these heroics, the second one's called Dream. So that one was Nightmare. This is Dream. Ha ha ha. So Ysera opens a portal to the Emerald Dream, and all heroes in the selected area are pulled through it and transported to the core with full health. If Ysera selects this heroic, all of her abilities that heal are granted a passive bonus to healing. This ability can be used to clear the field during a team fight that's not going well, or to retreat to defend the core.
Yeah, how nice is that? To have a faster Morales transport, medevac dropship, right? One that you don't have to wait a few seconds to get what's going on, and one that the healer forces you to go with, right? Because as fun as it is to choose if you want to go on that medevac or not, I think when it comes to solo queue, at least, it's a lot stronger if you have a healer that can go, no, we're going back, guys. We're going back.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that it's almost instant. I mean, I wanted to really pull these heroes in and get you back to the core. Let's say the boss is on the core and you want to push that keep before you go defend the boss. You can be back in a second to be back there, and you're transported with full health. So, I mean, a lot of similar abilities in these builds, but what's different than the medevac dropship is that it's instant and you're getting fully healed by the time you get back to the core, but there's only one place you can go.
Totally. And it's a great defensive maneuver, too, especially like you said, if you're pushed into your base and you need to make sure you can get back out there, because that's really scary when you're in a game and all of your forts and keeps are down. So the enemy could rush your core at any moment, but at the same time, if you're going to win, you need to push to the other side. You can't just sit at home and wait for stuff to happen. So I really, really like that idea that you could have the opportunity to just go back if stuff goes wrong.
Yeah, and chat is totally right what they're talking about right now. They're saying that people control so hard with this. And it's true. And we've made a few abilities on the show where we're like, I hope there aren't any. We like to imagine that everyone out there is trying to win these games and trying to, get out there and do their best. So in the perfect world, in the world of the dream, there wouldn't be any trolls that would take you back from, you're just about to destroy the enemy core. It's at 1 or 2%. And then they transport everybody back to their core and then GG.
Yeah, exactly. And let's be fair, there are trolls regardless of abilities that affect you or not. How many of us have had an Asmodan that did nothing but push one lane the entire game?
No words.
Yeah, it was a loss, not surprising, and we were all very upset, but that you control the game regardless.
Yeah, very true. This takes it to a whole new level, though, so Chad is right. But it would be a cool idea if you were in Team League and you were all on chat and you're like, when you're going to go back to the core, just suck everyone through this portal and then continue on. So if I had to sum up my Ysera, I would say just that. I mean, that it's a flexible support character that can deal some serious damage if you choose to go the assassin route.
I like it. I really, really like the idea of bouncing between life and death, right? You're a giver of life, but you're also a dealer of death.
Yeah, dealer of death when you're in that nightmare form, which was pretty scary in that short time we saw her in that nightmare form in Legion, which is great. If you haven't played it, go play it. All right, so before we can say that these heroes are completed and put into the archives of HeroesForge, we gotta get into some specialty skins and dances here. So, Kristen, what's your specialty skin for Ysera?
My specialty skin, I love, love, love Maleficent. Not the recent movie, not the live action movie. No, the original Maleficent, animated from Sleeping Beauty. And I really, really would like her to have that skin. And you'd have different colors, and your animal companion would change based on the color. So you go with the classic black and purple, you get the crow. Maybe if you have a green, it's a toad. And if it's red, it's a squirrel. You know, that kind of thing.
That's so cool. I love when they do stuff like that with color variations. Like, is it Tychus's tattoo on his armor changes with whatever color variation of the skin that you're wearing. And that is so cool when they do stuff. And Maleficent, you know, believe it or not, I think Maleficent, the original one, before they brought Angelina Jolie in and tried to make her human and nice and stuff like that, I think she is the scariest Disney villain.
Oh, really? I thought she was the most awesome, because the scariest one for me growing up was the Wicked Witch from Snow White, because we had one of those storybooks and it had a soundboard along the side. You read through the story, there are pictures throughout the words, you press the sounds and it corresponds to the story. So one of the pictures is the face of the witch and you press it and it's her cackle. And we kept that book in the closet in my bedroom, and I swore every night she would materialize and come out of that closet if Dad didn't check it, turn on the light, and then shut the door.
Well, you have really good reason to say that's the scariest villain. I just thought Maleficent was scary. I have no story behind it.
No, she totally is. She is ruthless. She is absolutely ruthless. It's only frustrating because they give her such incompetent sidekicks.
Yeah, it's very... There's a dichotomy. This is just crazy. I mean, Maleficent, though, would be awesome. And Maleficent would be a really good Onyxia skin, too. I mean, just the fact that you could turn into the dragon form, too. I mean, that'd be really neat.
Yeah, I think maybe all the dragons need a Maleficent-ish type skin.
Absolutely. Done. I'll put it in the game. Okay, my specialty skin, I have two. The first one I'm calling Ysera in a Snuggie.
Because she sleeps so much?
Yep, so that's pretty much it.
Would it be one of those special Snuggies where it makes her look like she's got a mermaid tail, or she's a Barbie or something?
Yeah, those are all the skin variations, I would take it. The first one, though, is just like the original Snuggie. Or maybe she has a onesie skin where she's just in a onesie, like a Pikachu onesie, and then like a Charmander onesie and a Squirtle one. No. Bulbasaur, Charmander, green, red. Okay, that's the real skin.
There we go. There we go. It's done.
And then my second skin idea was called Miss Sandwoman. So instead of Mr. Sandman, it's Miss Sandwoman. So she'd be complete with like a night stocking cap and a side satchel full of dream sand.
Oh, that's so cute. Would there be a little bum 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 bum?
Absolutely. Yes. And speaking of dance, my dance moves for Ysera are Ysera style, which is Gangnam style, but with a Ysera twist. Hey, sexy lady. Don't ask why, because no one knows.
As long as she puts on the sunglasses, that's all I care about.
Can you imagine Ysera doing Gangnam style?
Yes.
Yes.
I've seen Stranger in World of Warcraft.
Ysera style is the dance move over here. Okay, what are you thinking for your dance moves for Ysera?
All right, well, this one, again, I'm taking it from the Forger. It was too good not to be featured, is my argument. And that is all the single ladies. Now put your hands up. Should do a little all the single ladies dance.
She's single, right? I mean, yeah.
I think so. I think there was one story where her consort sacrificed himself to save her. So if that's true, then she's now single, or was single prior to dying.
Wah wah. It just got a whole lot sadder. But anyways, back to MistakenMishaps idea, all the single ladies. That would be so cool. And also if the other dragon aspects would appear and join in on the dance.
Could you imagine little Chromie getting down?
Oh, that'd be really funny. That'd be really funny. Okay, I think after that we can definitely say these heroes were forged. Oh man, 3 awesome builds this episode, all inspired off of our featured forger, MistakenMishaps. Thank you so much for being a patron. Thank you so much for sending in your idea. If you have ideas on who you want to see on the show, and if you want to be the next featured forger, all you gotta do is send it to us in one of a million bazillion ways. In reality, it's like 4 ways you can send it to us. You can send us an email, contactheroesforge@gmail.com. You can shoot us a tweet @ForgeHeroes, or you can head on over to our website, which is HeroesForge.club, and there's a contact section at the top you can click on and shoot us your ideas. Those come directly to us. And it doesn't have to be a full kit like this. It can be just an idea for a hero you'd like to see on the show. It can be one ability, or you could say, I think it'd really be really cool if Deckard Cain did this or whatever. And then we can just go right off of that, and we will just keep on forging along. And Ysera is a fan favorite that I would not be surprised is in the Nexus sooner rather than later.
Are you going to call this year she's in?
I already called that there's going to be a dragon this year. And I honestly think it will be a Nyxia. But second place, I'm going to say Ysera.
Gotcha. So not Alexstrasza.
No, I think a Nyxia. I think they're going to dig deep. They're going to dig a little deeper, and we're going to have... and I think we're going to have a Nyxia in here. But I think Ysera would be really... Alexstrasza... Just bring the dragons. Dragon event, like chat said. Dragon event.
Yeah, their roars, our earbuds are broken. We are met with time beyond our imaginings because they live for so long. It's wicked. We won't even know what the party's about by the time it starts.
Okay, hear me out on this. What if they had like a Cataclysm map and they actually had a dragon event where they're like, the next 4 heroes that we're releasing are all dragons, and we're also got this really cool map to put them all on. Welcome to heaven.
I would be so excited for that. I would be playing every single day as many hours as I could, and everybody gets a dragon, right? Nobody's left out. All dragons all the time, right?
That'd be really, really fun. I'm looking forward to the next event. Those are always really fun when they theme the hero builds and they got the new maps that come out. I mean, every day I wake up and read this news and like, come on, where's that next event? Well, who's the next hero? And we just keep forging on. Speaking of, Kristen, where can people find you in the interwebs?
People can find me at Dream Destroyer, that is DRMDESTRYR, over at Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as my health and fitness blog, battletobebetter.weebly.com.
Battle to be better. It's the time to be reading that. With New Year's resolutions, everything going out there, make sure that you read Battle to be better. It is so great. Okay, you can find me right here on HeroesForge. We stream live every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Amove TV. You can also find us on all of your favorite podcasting apps, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. If we're not on an app that you listen to podcasts on, let us know, and we'll do our best to get on there. We have lots of different ways to get in contact that we already talked about, but you can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/HeroesForge. A huge thank you again to all of our patrons out there, and if you'd like to become a patron, you can do that at patreon.com/HeroesForge. A big, massive thank you to MistakenMishaps for being our featured forger again. And Kristen, lots more featured forgers coming in the future.
Yeah, I'd say we at least have a full month. At least.
Oh yeah, and beyond, with different ideas and crazy stuff that's coming. So get your ideas in here and we'll keep this featured forger, what do we call it? The Forge train rolling. We'll just keep rolling. We'll see how many weeks we can go with these featured forgers as we keep on chucking down 2017. Happy New Year again to everyone out there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all in the real world.